What happens when Hollywood's most beloved underdog meets daytime television's most controversial host? You're about to witness one of the most explosive confrontations ever captured. On live television, the day Sylvester Stallone walked into what he thought would be a friendly promotional interview, and instead found himself in a verbal boxing match that ended with security escorting him off the set. This wasn't just another celebrity spat. It was the moment when two completely different worlds collided in the most spectacular way possible. The morning began like any other at the View studio in Manhattan. Sylvester Stallone arrived early for what his publicist promised would be a straightforward interview to promote his latest project. The legendary actor, now in his 70s but still carrying that unmistakable Rocky Balboa confidence, sat in the green room reviewing talking points with his team. Having done hundreds of interviews over his 5-decade career, from small local stations to major network shows, The View was supposed to be just another stop on his promotional tour, when a production assistant called out, "5 minutes to air, Mr. Stallone." He stood, straightened his jacket, and made his way toward the set. The studio audience buzzed with excitement, many of them longtime fans who had grown up watching Rocky and Rambo. As Stallone stepped onto the familiar round-table set, the audience erupted in applause. Joy Behar sat waiting, shuffling her note cards with a smirk that regular viewers knew all too well. She had been doing research on Stallone all week, but not the kind his publicist expected. While her co-hosts prepared questions about his latest film and career, Joy had been digging into his political statements, business dealings, and personal controversies, determined to create what she privately called good television. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Sylvester Stallone," announced the host. The music swelled as Stallone took his seat to thunderous applause, unaware of what was about to unfold. "Sly, it's so great to have you here." Joy began with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I have to say, you look fantastic. For someone who's been taking so many hits, both in the movies and in real life." The comment hung in the air. Stallone's easygoing smile tightened. "Well, Joy, you know what they say. You can knock me down, but I'll always get back up," he replied lightly, though his instincts told him something was off. "Speaking of getting knocked down," Joy continued, leaning forward with that predatory gleam in her eyes, "I have to ask you about some of the choices you've made recently. For someone who built his career playing the everyman hero, you seem to have gotten pretty comfortable with some pretty elite circles." The studio grew quiet. Stallone's publicist, watching from the wings, felt her stomach drop. This wasn't the friendly promotional interview they'd been promised. "I'm not sure what you're getting at, Joy," Stallone said calmly, though his body language had shifted. "I've always tried to stay true to the characters I've played and the values they represent." "Really?" Joy shot back, her tone dripping with skepticism. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've forgotten where you came from. You've got multiple mansions, billionaire friends, and lately, some of your comments make it sound like you think you're better than the working-class people who made you famous in the first place." The accusation hit like a thunderbolt. This wasn't a morning show interview anymore. It was an ambush. The co-hosts exchanged uneasy glances while the audience sat frozen. Stallone's jaw tightened, his expression hardening into the same steely look that once silenced villains on screen. "You know what, Joy? I think you've got your facts wrong. I've never forgotten where I came from. My whole career has been about telling stories of regular people overcoming impossible odds." "Have you, though?" Joy pressed. "Because it seems like you've been living in a bubble for so long that you've lost touch with reality. When was the last time you talked to a real working person, not someone on your payroll?" The question was meant to provoke, and it worked. Stallone's composure began to crack. The tension in the room was electric, the kind that makes audiences lean forward in disbelief. "Listen, Joy," Stallone said, his tone now sharp. "I don't know what your problem is with me, But if you want to have a real conversation about my career and my life, I'm happy to do that. But if you just brought me here to ambush me with your personal opinions disguised as questions, then maybe we should just end this right now." Joy's eyes lit up. This was exactly what she had wanted. A live confrontation that would go viral before the credits even rolled. Joy saw her opportunity. Stallone's anger gave her exactly what she wanted. A viral moment that would make headlines and paint her as the fearless journalist unafraid to ask the tough questions. "Oh no, Sly, we're just getting started," she said, with a laugh that sent chills through the studio. "You see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone asks you a real question, you want to run away. Is that what Rocky would do? Is that what John Rambo would do?" The comparison to his most iconic characters was a low blow, and everyone in the studio knew it. Joy had just weaponized the very heroes that made Stallone a household name, turning them against him in the cruelest way possible. The audience gasped, and even some of the crew behind the cameras shook their heads in disbelief. Stallone's face flushed red, his hands clenching into fists on the table. "Don't you dare use my characters against me," he said, his voice carrying decades of frustration with interviewers who thought they could say anything for the sake of ratings. "Those characters mean something to people. They mean something to me. You don't get to twist them into some kind of weapon for your little gotcha moment." But Joy wasn't done. "That's exactly my point," she said coolly. "You created these characters who represent the American dream, men who fight for the little guy and never give up. But what have you become, Sly? Just another Hollywood elite who's completely out of touch with the people who actually live those struggles every day." The other co-hosts shifted uncomfortably. One tried to interject, suggesting they move on to talking about Stallone's new project. But Joy waved her off dismissively. "No, this is important. Our viewers deserve to know who they're really supporting when they buy movie tickets. They deserve to know if their hero has become everything he once stood against." That was the breaking point. Stallone pushed back his chair and stood up, towering over the table as his legendary temper finally broke through. "You want to know who I really am, Joy? I'm a guy who grew up with nothing. I slept in bus stations. I sold my dog just to survive while I was trying to make it in this business. I wrote Rocky when I was broke and desperate, and I turned down millions because I believed in that story. Because I believed it could inspire people." The studio fell silent except for the hum of the cameras. This wasn't the polished, media-trained Stallone people were used to. This was raw emotion, decades of passion and pain pouring out after years of being misunderstood. "And Abrutz, you know what the really sad part is?" he continued, his voice shaking. "I came here today thinking I was going to have a conversation with a professional journalist. Instead, I'm sitting across from someone who gets her kicks from tearing down people who've actually accomplished something with their lives." Joy's expression hardened. She leaned back with a satisfied smirk. "There it is, ladies and gentlemen. The real Sylvester Stallone. Not the humble everyman he pretends to be in his movies, but an arrogant Hollywood star who thinks he's above criticism." "Above criticism?" Stallone shot back, his voice echoing through the studio. "Lady, I've been criticized by everyone. Critics, pundits, random people on the street, for 50 years. But what you're doing isn't criticism. It's character assassination. And there's a difference." "Oh, please," Joy scoffed, rolling her eyes for the cameras. "You can't handle a few tough questions, so now you're playing the victim. How very Hollywood of you." Stallone leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You want tough questions? Here's one for you, Joy. When was the last time you created something that actually mattered to people? When was the last time you did something other than tear others down to make yourself feel important? The question hit hard. For the first time, Joy faltered. I informed the public, she said, but her voice wavered. I ask the questions that need to be asked. You attack people for ratings, Stallone said coldly. You hide behind the pretense of journalism while destroying reputations for entertainment. And the worst part? You seem to enjoy it. Joy's mask slipped completely. How dare you? She hissed. You don't know anything about me. I know exactly what you are, Stallone snapped. You sit at this table every day, tearing apart anyone who doesn't fit your narrow little worldview. You use your platform to bully and intimidate, and you call it journalism. The audience was riveted. No one dared move or speak. This was no longer an interview. It was a reckoning. That's enough, Joy barked, her voice trembling with rage. You don't get to come on my show and attack me. Your show, Stallone laughed bitterly. This isn't your show, Joy. This was supposed to be a place for honest conversation, but you've turned it into your personal platform for destruction. The tension was unbearable. Production assistants signaled frantically to the control room, unsure whether to cut to commercial. The other co-hosts sat frozen, powerless to intervene. Joy rose from her seat, her face flushed with fury. Get out, she demanded. Get out of here right now. Gladly, Stallone said, but he didn't move. He leaned across the table, his voice steady and fierce. But before I go, let me tell you something. You can try to destroy me all you want, but the characters I created, the stories I told, they're bigger than your petty little attacks. They'll still be inspiring people long after everyone's forgotten your name. The words hit like a punch. Joy's face twisted in fury. How dare you come into my house and disrespect me like this, she screamed. Security! Get security in here right now! But Stallone wasn't finished. Decades of frustration, misunderstanding, and misrepresentation boiled to the surface. This wasn't just about an interview anymore. It was about every time he'd been underestimated, mocked, or torn down for the sake of good television. The studio erupted in chaos as production assistants ran in every direction, some signaling frantically for the cameras to stop rolling, others calling for security. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent as they watched television history unfold in the most uncomfortable way possible. You think you're so smart, don't you? Joy shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. You think because you played some fictional characters that people love, that makes you untouchable? Well, let me tell you something, Sylvester Stallone. You're nothing but a washed-up has-been who hasn't had a relevant movie in 20 years. The insult was meant to break him, but instead it only seemed to give Stallone more strength. He straightened his posture and said, You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right about one thing. I have been playing fictional characters my whole career, but at least those characters stood for something positive. They gave people hope. They showed them that no matter how hard life gets, you can always fight back. He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering what would become the most quoted line of the entire confrontation. But you're not playing a character. This is who you really are. A bitter, angry person who gets her power from tearing others down. And that's not fiction. That's just sad. The studio fell dead silent, except for the sound of approaching footsteps as security guards arrived on the scene. Joy's face had gone pale, and for a moment she looked genuinely shaken by Stallone's words. "Ma'am, we need you to step back," one of the guards said, but Joy barely seemed to hear him. Her eyes stayed locked on Stallone, desperate to come up with something that could match the devastation of his last comment. You want to know what's really sad? She finally managed to say, her voice quieter but still dripping with venom. What's sad is watching a man who used to represent everything good about America turn into just another entitled celebrity who thinks the rules don't apply to him. Stallone shook his head slowly, disappointment etched across his face. The only rules I've ever tried to follow, Joy, are the ones that say you treat people with respect and dignity, something you clearly never learned. Sir, we're going to need you to come with us, a guard said, stepping forward as the tension refused to ease. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of the meltdown that was destined to explode across social media within hours. As Stallone began to walk toward the exit, escorted by security but not restrained, Joy couldn't resist one final jab. Run away, Sly. That's what you do best when things get tough, isn't it? He stopped dead in his tracks and slowly turned back toward her. The entire studio held its breath. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady, but every word carried the weight of absolute conviction. You know what, Joy? You're right. I am walking away, but not because I'm running from a fight. I'm walking away because some battles aren't worth fighting, and some people aren't worth the energy it takes to argue with them. I came here to talk about my work, to connect with fans, to share something positive. Instead, I found myself in a cage with someone who feeds on conflict and negativity. He took a step closer, the guards tensing in anticipation. But here's what you need to understand. I may be leaving this studio, but I'm leaving on my own terms. You didn't defeat me, Joy. You just showed everyone watching exactly who you really are. The words landed like a final knockout blow. Joy's composure shattered completely. Get him out of here! She screamed, pointing furiously toward the exit. Get him out right now! Gladly, Stallone replied, his dignity intact despite the chaos surrounding him. As he walked toward the studio doors, the guards flanked him respectfully, almost apologetically. Before leaving, he turned to the audience one last time. To everyone who came here today, expecting to hear about movies and storytelling, I apologize that you had to witness this instead. You deserved better, and I'm sorry you didn't get it. The audience erupted in spontaneous applause, many rising to their feet in support of the Hollywood legend who had kept his composure under fire. Joy looked around, stunned that the applause wasn't for her. Sit down, she shouted. This is my show. Sit down right now. But the applause only grew louder as Stallone disappeared through the studio doors, leaving behind a scene of chaos and disbelief. Joy stood alone at the center of it all, her carefully crafted image in ruins, her reputation crumbling in front of millions. The cameras finally stopped rolling as producers realized what they had just captured was too explosive for live television. In those final moments before the feed cut, viewers at home saw Joy Behar standing amid the wreckage of what was supposed to be a simple promotional interview, looking lost, defeated, and exposed by her own cruelty. As the dust settled and the studio emptied, one truth became crystal clear. This wasn't just a failed interview or a celebrity outburst. It was the moment when years of aggressive journalism finally crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And when one of Hollywood's most beloved figures reminded everyone that there's a difference between asking tough questions and launching personal attacks. The confrontation was over, but its impact was just beginning. Satins.